Another major disaster thriller lands in 2024, this time on a scenic island paradise struck by sudden volcanic eruption. Ash clouds darken the skies, and to make matters worse, a powerful earthquake triggers a massive tsunami. Tourists on the island are suddenly thrown into a desperate fight for survival. We open on a group of vacationers enjoying themselves on a yacht. One woman panics when she notices that her friend, who had just jumped into the water, isn't resurfacing. Within moments, the ocean begins bubbling violently. There's no time to escape. Cut 2. David and his family have arrived at Palma Island for a holiday. It's a popular tourist hotspot in Europe, drawing thousands of visitors every year. They're mesmerized by the coastline. In a deep canyon inland, Maria, a geologist, hikes through thick volcanic mist with her colleague. At the center of the island lies a dormant volcano, quiet for decades, but not entirely inactive. Maria visits regularly to monitor activity, but this time something feels different. Water is seeping mysteriously from the rock walls. She collects a sample and notices dozens of dead bats nearby. Her partner measures dangerously high CO2 levels. When they shine a light overhead, they discover a fresh crack in the cave ceiling. At the island's Geological Institute, Director Valerie watches the news. A yacht incident on the southeast coast left 7 tourists dead. Just as she begins to feel uneasy, Maria and her partner arrive with troubling findings. The data suggests escalating volcanic activity. Valerie, though concerned, opts not to issue an evacuation. With peak tourist season underway, panic could do more harm than good. Meanwhile, David and his family are enjoying the beach when their young son, Maria's colleague, raises a deeper concern. A several-kilometer-long crack on the seaside slope of the volcano. But years ago, Valerie had ordered an evacuation that proved to be a false alarm, damaging her credibility and the island's economy. She's not eager to repeat that mistake. Meanwhile, David and his family are enjoying the beach when their young son suddenly goes missing. Panic sets in as they search frantically. They eventually spot him standing on a rock, staring out at the sea, where dozens of sea turtles are swimming away from shore. This is their nesting ground. What could be driving them away? Back at the volcano, Maria finishes analyzing the collected water. It's not groundwater, but condensed steam, caused by shifting internal temperatures. She and her partner return to the site, trekking over ash-laden paths. As they set up instruments, they discover a new fissure forming on the mountainside. It seems small now, but could grow quickly. Suddenly, data from the Institute shows a sharp spike in underground temperature. Valerie urgently calls Maria, telling her to get out immediately. Before the call ends, smoke begins pouring from the fissure. Grabbing their gear, the two make a run for it, but Maria slips and tumbles down the slope. She wakes up in a hospital bed. Outside, everything looks calm. Valerie is sitting nearby. Fortunately, the volcano didn't erupt. Those clouds were just vented pressure. Internal readings are now below the danger threshold, so no evacuation was issued. As a geologist, Mark understood all too well. He urged the department chief to act, but the overly cautious official dismissed his concerns. Unable to convince each other, they brought the matter to the mayor's secretary, but she sided with the chief. No action could be taken based on speculation alone. Evacuating the island would create chaos among residents and tourists. The chief eventually proposed a compromise. They'd closely monitor volcanic activity and report all data to higher authorities, leaving the decision to them. But Mark feared the delay would cost lives. He knew the volcano could blow at any moment. His first thought was his younger brother. He called and insisted he book the earliest flight off the island. When Mark returned to the monitoring center, he saw the internal pressure readings spiking fast. The surrounding rock was shaking violently. It was happening. The chief, now clearly alarmed, ordered his assistant to notify city officials to begin evacuation procedures. But it was already too late. At that moment, a passenger plane was preparing for takeoff. Just as it began to ascend, a massive cloud of ash erupted from the volcano. The pilot received the cancellation notice mid-air. Flames trailed from the engines as it plunged from the sky. Back at a hotel, Derek and his family had been enjoying lunch, only to look up and witness the jet falling from the sky in a trail of fire. Realizing the magnitude of what was unfolding, the mayor was quickly briefed by the chief of the Geological Bureau, who relayed the analysis from the expert team. According to their data, the eruption would stabilize within a few hours. Confident in this assessment, the mayor rejected the request for mass evacuation. The chief was speechless. Weighed down by responsibility, the chief seemed to age in an instant. He ordered his team to evacuate with their families, but chose to stay behind to keep monitoring the volcano. Mark did the same. He rushed home, only to find his brother had gotten into trouble, drunk and disorderly. Mark tried to explain the imminent danger, but since no official evacuation had been issued, police dismissed his warnings as rumor-mongering and arrested him. To everyone's surprise, the eruption actually did settle a few hours later, just as predicted. Tourists returned to their carefree vacationing. Derek's wife, however, received a discreet call from her brother, a worker at the emergency response office. All flights to and from La Palma Island had just been grounded. Sensing serious trouble, he urged her to take the ferry and leave immediately. Derek trusted his brother-in-law. He packed up and headed to the port with his family, but taxis were scarce. That's when he spotted a van left running by a distracted driver hauling cargo nearby. He loaded his family in, slammed the pedal, and sped toward the docks. They reached the port just as a ferry was preparing to depart. As they began unloading, the van's rightful driver came running. Derek told his family to board without him and stayed behind to hold the man off. After a scuffle, he learned something that nearly broke him. Walking to the docks through a residential shortcut would have been faster than driving. By the time he arrived on foot, the ferry was already pulling away. He stood helplessly as his family sailed off, but he wasn't giving up. He headed to a nearby marina to rent a boat and follow. Just then, a loud evacuation siren pierced the sky. The chief had seen the pressure levels spike again, this time even higher, and didn't wait for official approval. He issued a full evacuation order. Derek nearly choked in frustration. The boat rental office had just suspended operations, but a kind local offered him the last spot on his private yacht. Derek barely climbed aboard when a thunderous roar split the air. Mark's brother, hearing the blast, rushed to the police station to get his sister out. He wasn't sure how, but when he got there, the officers had already fled. Keys tossed on the ground. He freed Mark, and together they released a few others locked up nearby. As they headed for the docks, Mark and her brother encountered Derek, desperate, stranded, and out of options. There are no more boats at the docks, the man said grimly. Earlier, Derek had barely managed to squeeze onto the last yacht. Just as they were about to depart, a woman clutching her child appeared at the shoreline. There weren't enough seats. Without hesitation, Derek gave up his spot for her. Perhaps fate rewards the selfless. Mark's brother suddenly spoke up. He had stashed a speedboat on the far side of the island. Neighboring island, they rushed to a beach behind the volcano, where, just as promised, a small vessel lay hidden. But as they untied it, a loud voice rang out behind them. It was one of the convicts Mark had freed during the chaos. Mark's brother refused. He lunged, trying to seize the weapon, only to be shot and collapse. Derek, desperate and enraged, tackled the assailant. The fight was brutal, with Derek taking several heavy blows before smashing a rock into the attacker's head. As more gang members approached, Derek pulled the grieving Mark to her feet. Wielding the fallen pistol, he fired warning shots to keep them at bay. Mark, regaining composure, jumped into the boat and steered them out to sea. Meanwhile, Derek's wife and children had safely reached a neighboring island, miraculously boarding the last flight out. But just before takeoff, daughter Sarah spotted her best friend stranded in the terminal. She handed over her father's ticket and insisted her friend board instead. Her mother, unaware of the plan, became frantic when Sarah didn't appear. She ran off the plane to search. Back at the Geological Bureau, the chief sat in silence. To his surprise, a colleague returned. Mark's partner, who had been knocked unconscious during the earlier chaos. Awakened by the eruption alarm, she'd returned to the only place she knew, the lab. They exchanged a knowing smile. Donning protective suits, they climbed toward the crater, now a seething cauldron of lava. Regret lined the chief's face. Had he acted sooner, perhaps lives could have been saved. His colleague pulled out a bottle of wine, ready to toast the end. But before they could drink, the ground convulsed. A deep rumble split the mountain as half of it sheared off into the ocean. A massive tsunami was now forming.